Yeah, I was muted, so it keeps popping off when I join.
Okay, so it's 12:16. I'm going to call the Finance Committee meeting to order. And the first thing would be a recommendation that the agenda be approved.
I could do that. That the agenda of this meeting be approved.
Thank you. Seconder for that.
I'll second it, Rick.
Okay, great. And any discussion? All in favor? Good. I think that's carried. I don't
Yes.
see Ian, but maybe that's just because I don't have him. I need to look at the gallery view. Yep. Okay.
I'm there.
Oh, I see everybody. That's good. So we have some minutes from October 14th to approve.
Rick, can we just let Archie put the link on the agenda before we continue?
Of course.
Okay, sorry, she was just doing that. So one of the things we're going to be doing is just probably setting 5 minutes prior and after the meeting, so we could just get everything set up accordingly.
Okay.
So Archie, just give a thumbs up when you're good to go.
Just give me the word, Mo, when we're ready.
We're good to go.
Okay, Rick, we're good to go. Sorry for interrupting.
No problem at all. Thank you. So we have some minutes to adopt from October 14th.
Minutes of the Finance Committee meeting held on October 14th, 2020.
Thank you, Seconder, for that. Thank you very much, Celeste. Any discussion? All in favor? Thanks, that's carried. And are there any trustee items for finance? No presentations, no information items. Next one is Mo financial statement analysis.
Okay, I'm just going to be pretty brief in this one, but I'm hoping that everyone had an opportunity to review the document that we attached to the agenda. So basically what all I'm going to be doing today is just sharing some key metrics with the board, and then just opening it up. So with that said, context is that every year after the statements are approved by the board,
your audio is breaking up, Mo.
Sorry, could you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, so every year when the financial statements are approved by the board, we're also required to do a financial statement analysis and discussion. And typically what we have decided to do was we've decided to do that after the financial statements have been approved, not during. And the reason for that is because it's already a lot of information, because the financials are like 50 pages or something like that when it comes to the notes and everything like that combined. So it's a lot of information for the board. So we'd rather just take that opportunity and do it a little bit later on in the subsequent school year. And another key change that we're doing right now, which you guys might find the format changing next year, but we've decided to simplify it in a form of a PowerPoint presentation that's very easy to understand, that's touching just on some key metrics. But in reality, noting that the ministry might be coming down with a template that we are to follow, which would be very wordy, and it's essentially like a 20-page document to already a 50-page document. So until they make that into kind of more of a mandate, we're going to be kind of sticking to this format, as we feel this is the format that we've used a couple of years ago with the board, and it's more of an easy to understand format. So if there's any concerns with that, you could let me know. Otherwise, I'll let the board know if there's any changes. So just moving on right to some of the key metrics. I'm just going to go down to obviously the 4 key measures. And obviously, we spend a lot of the time on the educational results, so I'm just going to be focusing more on the financial measures when it comes to measures of financial health. So I'm going to go to right away measure number 2, which is our reserves and our accumulated operating surplus. Okay, so essentially, some of the indicators of the financial resources available for the future are our accumulated operating surplus. And just some quick metrics around that is we went from 1.5 million in June 2010 to 4.5 million in June 2020. However, when you start looking down into those numbers and using the most recent recommendation, which was in 2014 by Ernst & Young, of having an operating surplus between 2 to 3% of annual expenditures. And by that, Ralph and I are interpreting that as unrestricted, meaning that's not tied to any specific purposes. In reality, our unrestricted surplus is 1.4%, which is pretty consistent over the last 3 years of where we've been, a little bit lower, but still good enough for us kind of operating within that amount. And in reality, when you look into what our restricted component of our surplus is, it's 5.2%. And note that right away, when you look at that, almost all of that 5.2% has been appropriated for the 2021 school year. And a lot of that would have to do with things like your Pemberton construction program, your special purpose funds, etc. So in reality, our unrestricted surplus is a little bit lower, 1.4%, but it's consistent to where we have been historically over the last 3 years. Okay, so just moving on to the second metric that is commonly used and we'll be touching on a little bit more today is your administrative expenses. Okay, so overall, I'm not going to really repeat what the presentation is saying, but we define what the administrative expenses include, and it's those 6 categories that are, I've shared the screen right now. Okay, it's also in the presentation. So just moving on, just when it comes to the financial metrics of it, based on the audited financial statements for those 5 categories, our administration expense accounts for 11% or 7.2 million in 1920. Okay, note that even though our school district since 2009 and 10 has grown by 28%, meaning from 4,021 FTE students to 5,162. Our administrative expenses back then was still at 11%. So there hasn't been no change when it comes to the percentage compared to our revenues of administrative expenses, even though we've grown by 28%.
Mo, it's Celeste here. I think you just skipped over cash balances by accident.
No, the plan was to just kind of go over some of the key highlights and just kind of leave it up to the board to kind of read the rest. So what I'll do is right after, like I only have a few more key metrics to go over, I'll just open it up for questions or whatever, if there are any, if it's not clear, if the presentation isn't clear. Okay, so just moving on to the next metrics. And it's basically in the section of other school board financial health indicators. And the one that we wanted to talk about is in your statement of financial positions, and it's your working capital per student, okay, which basically means that the amount of funds available per student that could be spent in the future. Okay, so just going right down to that. Oh, sorry, that's not the one, sorry. That one we deemed probably not too useful for the board. There was another one actually we deemed after that that's more useful, which is actually going right down to it. It's the operational costs spent on salaries and benefits, yes. Sorry, Ralph and I and Elena were meeting last night about this, so we were trying to see what the board might be interested in. So when it comes to this one, it is actually very interesting. So this is basically what it is. It's the amount of expenses that we had spent compared to our expenditures on salary and benefits for the last 5 years. And overall, this is showing in 2015-16, 85% of our expenditures were related to salaries and benefits. And all the way going up to 19-20 now, it's at 86%. So it's grown by 1%, but overall, we've been very consistent over the last 5 years when it comes to that key metrics. And that's about it. Those are just some of the highlights of the presentation. Yeah, with that said, I'm not sure if there's additional clarity that's required. So Celeste, do you still have the cash balances? I can get Ralph to explain that for you if you wanted.
Yeah, no, it's okay. The way that it's laid out is easy enough to understand. I just thought you skipped that slide by accident and wanted to hear anything that you might have to say about it, but I don't have any questions at this time.
Okay.
Okay. Mo, does that conclude your presentation on that agenda item?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Thank you for that. And then that takes us down to, where are we?
6B.
Yeah, 6B. Oh yeah, the new auditor selection process. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna share a screen really quickly with the board. Are you guys seeing the selection of the new auditor?
Yeah.
Timeline with it. Okay, so with that said, I want to just give a little bit of a background on what I did. So I went to the BCSTA Hub, and I looked into the best practices for when it comes to selecting a new auditor. And just to before we even got there, I wanted to summarize that for the trustees who weren't here or who just wanted just a refresh. The reason why we're doing this is because our 5-year term with the Office of the Auditor General, which they select who they're going to go to for 5 years, ended. And it ended with the 1920 financial statements. So this would mean for the conclusion of the 2021 school year, meaning that the financial statements for the 2021 fiscal year, we would need to select a new auditor. Okay, so basically what I did was I went to the BCSTA Hub and I looked for some best practices, including looking for some guiding documents, for example, from Richmond, etc. And based on then I looked into how we've done it in the past. Then based on everything, all the documents I've found, we basically came up with, including reading Section 95 of the School Act, we came up with a timeline of significant milestones. Okay, so in reality, what we plan on doing in between December 15th to 18th is basically preparing a RFP, so a request for proposal to go out when it comes to selected accounting firms with a number of questions, including their overall experience, their personnel and staff involved with audit engagements, conflict of interest check, which is huge for the auditors, scheduling and availability, resources within the firms, additional services provided by the firms, obviously references and other relevant factors, and a fee schedule. And then basically just some key details here is we would then come up with a standard audit proposal format, which would be a template that each one of the firms who we reach out to would be required to submit back to us. And essentially part of the key documents would be, they would be sharing what their fee schedule would look like, but it would be for a term of 5 years, very similar to what the OEG was, a term of 5 years. And then essentially, when it comes down to once we get those proposals back, each firm shall be invited to present to the accounting staff when it comes to any questions that we may have or anything that they might want to add. And then in reality, all of that would basically kind of be the guiding document of what the request for proposal template would look like. then the plan would be in January 4th to January 31st. It's to open up the RFP to service providers only through invited firms, which is very consistent with how other school districts are doing it. And essentially, it's the invited firms would be, I would be coming up with a list by working directly with BC ASBO and also our regional partners like the District of Squamish, and coming up with at least like 5 to 7 firms that are being used and that are also familiar with public sector, and also when it comes to PSAS rules around the public sector, very important, and more in particular school board operations. So in reality, once that's done, we would be expecting all of the proposals to be submitted to us by January 15, 2021. And then essentially from January 16 to January 31st, the selected RFP, selected vendors would be presenting to us to kind of cap off their completed RFP documents. Then basically from February 1st to February 12th, 2021, we plan on selecting the preliminary selection of the auditor. Okay, and basically the selection would be based upon our review of the firm's submission and the interviews. We would obviously be doing once again a conflict of interest check, and then we would also have, which would be part of the proposal in the first place, the proposal template, and evaluation matrix, which would be utilized when it comes to evaluating the service providers or the auditors. And in this case, it would be some key identifiers in the matrix, like the quality of service, the level of experience, the fee schedules, the references, all the stuff that I mentioned earlier above. So then on February 10th, we plan on giving the finance committee an update about the auditor shortlisting. Then on February 25th, we plan on basically introducing the final candidate for the auditor to admin council and senior leadership team for them to ask their questions. And basically, if everything works out, then we hope to go back to the board by March 2021 for a motion of the approval for the selected auditor, and kind of just an overall background, a little bit more detail compared to the original shortlisting that we would have done in February. And the board would then make a motion. And then obviously in June 2021, that's where we start our financial audit process. And that's kind of kicked off by the board, the auditor presenting the audit engagement letter to the board, which is a plan of how they plan on doing the audit. And then the board would essentially make a motion or through the minutes would say, yes, we're okay with engagement. And then the auditors would go ahead and do their typical process they do every year. So I know it's a lot of information, but hopefully the timeline somewhat made it easier for you to understand the process and the level of commitment involved in selecting a new auditor.
Right, can I ask a question?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Celeste, go ahead.
That's okay. I was just wondering if this document could be linked in the agenda just so we can all look at it at our leisure. In advance would have been amazing too, but barring it being ready before the meeting, it's so great to be able to read on our own time.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I just out of just for clarification, I did this as my speaking notes up to last night with Ralph and Elena, but in reality, what I determined was the process was so complex that I needed to show this to you guys, because it would have just been me rambling on and on. And yeah, so absolutely, we share this with you guys. So Archie will send you guys the hyperlink. Yeah.
All right, I'm just heading back to my agenda. Any other questions, first of all, for Mo on the auditor selection? No, then Mo, the next couple of items are yours on budget development.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just promoting Dave. He just logged in right now, sorry.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
It would be good to welcome David.
Okay. Before we get to the survey, Ralph, did you just want to talk about the timeline?
Yeah, I could do that right away.
Hi, Ralph. Thank you.
Hello, Rick and trustees. Yeah, the timeline is just for developing a budget for the school year beginning next September, 21-22. So we'll start shortly with a survey that Mo will talk about in a minute, the annual budget input survey. The results of that are intended to inform the partner group meeting on February 17th at Whistler Secondary. At about the same time, the principals provide estimates, preliminary estimates of the student count. We'll forward them to the ministry and put them into the school alignment books towards the end of February, February 24th to March 5th for our alignment meetings with the schools. We'll get a funding announcement sometime mid-March, end of March from the ministry, and that'll tighten up any funding estimates that we need in the follow-up alignment meetings with the schools, April 7th to 13th. And then plan would be to bring a first reading of the budget bylaw May 12th and proposed adoption on June 9th. And that's it.
All right. Thanks. Okay, Mo, you can just keep going.
Okay, so the next item was, when it comes to the budget development process, it was the survey. So we did attach 3 hyperlinks to the agenda. And so I'm hoping that the board had a chance to go over what the survey would look like, which is kind of the established format, which we worked on with the board last year. And not only that, I think a key part was, okay, well, how is that information being summarized now? So we also shared a summary results of last year's survey, partner group meeting budget survey that was sent out. And one of the key things that, just for the board's recollection, that we did different was we actually, Lisa and I, in the kind of before the partner group meeting, we took, there was a feedback given to us from one of the trustees, and it made complete sense. Okay, well, instead of summarizing the survey and summarizing each one of the categories, and now just providing percentages to it, can you go into a little bit more context? And that's like examples of people responding and all that stuff, and just kind of a little bit more in the detailed level of it. So what Lisa and I did was we, before the partner group meeting, in the attachment you're looking at, we actually sat down and re-summarized the summary results for the 2021 survey. And we gave some examples of not only the key themes, but some individual examples to kind of show the board and our partner groups what the respondents were kind of referring to. For example, under the parents, students, and other community members categories, key theme was well-maintained buildings, grounds, and consistent and reliable transportation. Before, we just had that in our summary to the board, but then we kind of went one level down when it came to the feedback, and we said that, okay, well, 20 out of 52 respondents, or 0.13% of our parent community, our total community, kind of replied with this theme, but we gave an individual response example. So, for example, quotation marks: my children get to school every day safely on the school bus. There are well-maintained buildings where they go to school. And another quotation mark: buses seem to be on time and get through all weather. All schools appear to be reasonably well-maintained, et cetera, et cetera. So we kind of provided all those quotation marks inside our survey, giving the trustees and our partner groups more of a context of what they actually mean by well-maintained buildings, grounds, and consistent and reliable transportation. And we did the same thing for each one of those key themes. So in reality, what we also did was, prior to kind of finalizing the draft 21-22 partner group meeting survey that the board had in the agenda, we also looked at, which the board also has, the partner group meeting feedback. Okay, and in reality, there wasn't a lot said in the feedback about the survey. There was a few things though. One of them was the format and information was great. I like to have a senior member and of staff facilitating the table talk. Okay, so as you would know, one of the things that the senior member of our staff was doing was they were actually going through the table talk with the survey results and going through with the partner groups in each tables of what the key themes were, how many percentage people replied, what were some of the examples, exactly what I presented to the board about prior to this, okay? So it's funny because then we had one comment when it comes to feedback. It's kind of contradicting the first one, which was an overview of the survey results done as a large group at the beginning rather than table time. Okay, so it's kind of contradictory to the first one. So aside from that, there wasn't really a lot of feedback that was given on the actual survey itself. So with that said, we have attached the template that we used from last year to the board, to the partner groups, as kind of the template that we're using for the 21-22 survey also for our partner groups. And just, I don't want to go through all of it. I'm hoping that the board, the trustees had an opportunity to go through it. But with that said, that's kind of the basis on why we kept the template the same, and putting more of a focus on the summary of what happens after we get the feedback, not before.
Okay, let's see if there's if the board has any questions about that material.
Just have a quick question, please.
Yes, go ahead.
I noticed that there were only 4 students in these 2021 budget input survey results. Has thought been given to kind of soliciting more student feedback, or is it just not? Maybe thoughts?
That was last year's. So you mean inviting more students to the partner group meeting actually? Or?
How do we get more students
Oh,
included in
okay.
giving their input?
Okay.
Yes.
My recollection is that we invited, we attempted to get lots, and the uptake is difficult. But Lisa could tell us more.
Yeah, we do work with our student councils at the secondary schools, ask them to help. They work with the school community to get them involved. We ask them to collate some information and submit it. So sometimes it could be a whole student council submitting one response. But to your point, Celeste, it would be great to get the students more involved, and we can do that. We can keep looking at ways to do that. The students tend to tell us they don't have enough context for the input. But certainly we would like to have that input, even if it's us who has to make that context.
Thanks, Lisa.
Okay.
Good comment.
Any other questions for Mo on the whole budget development topic? No, let's move down to item 7, statement of financial information. Mo?
Yeah.
And there's a recommended motion there. Were you going to speak to it?
Yeah, I can just quickly summarize it. But before I do that, Elena is the one that works very hard on this. So Elena, are you good with me speaking on your behalf, or do you want to?
Yeah, you can speak. It's the statement is mandatory for all public accounts, and to comply with Budget Transparency Act. So it's just provide additional. It's not audited. It just provides additional pieces of information based on financial statements that had already been audited.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Elena. So basically, it is what it is. It's like the financial statement analysis and discussion. The only difference is this one, that's recommended that we do that. This one is actually in the it's in the act, that the Financial Information Act, that we need to do that after the financials have been approved. And in reality, it's providing more information when it comes to, in particular, key suppliers, employee remuneration over 75,000, and for employees over 75,000, their expenditures that are related to that. For example, like the travel, membership in professional associations, registration fees, business meeting expenses, tuition, relocation of extraordinary hiring expenses. And essentially, we would just be making that posted on our website, which we do every year. And the board would be basically making a motion to approve that before it's put on the website. And just noting that, there's a lot of details. It's thousands and thousands and thousands worth of GL transactions that are kind of originating in this information. So note that, just like how the auditors say, the financial statements are free of material misstatements, right? So in reality, when we're looking at that type of a granular level and we're doing a report based on that, note that there's like thousands of expenses, and some of them might be for like $20 or $5, and we're accounting for everything, right? And there's one person doing that. So I wanted the board to just keep that in back of your mind too.
Okay, any questions on the Sophia report? It's a good idea for us to take this opportunity to thank Elena for all that work. Thank you, Elena. Thanks, Ralph, for your previous report and the work that's behind that too. Let's move on to the 7B, the budget bylaw first reading.
Rick?
Yeah.
Before we do that, there's a recommendation.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thanks for keeping me on the straight and narrow.
No trouble.
It's a role that everybody has to share because I'm not all that good at. Yes. So is someone prepared to make that motion?
I could make the motion that the Finance Committee recommend the Board of Education approves the 2019. Wait, no, I read that wrong. That the Finance Committee recommend the Board of Education approves the 2019-2020 financial statement of financial information.
Yep, I think you got it. Thank you. Seconder for that. Sorry, thanks, Ian. And any discussion? All in favor? I see 1, 2 hands. Okay, thank you. And that makes 4. And I'm not, oh, you know what? I'm just not seeing everybody. That's what the problem is. Thank you. That's passed.
My hand's up too.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. That's passed. In order to see the document on the screen, which is the agenda, of course, I sort of share the screen and I sometimes can't see everybody. So I apologize for those hesitations. That takes us down to 7B. And 7BA is the budget summary. Was there any need to speak to that, Mo?
Yeah, I think Ralph should just quickly provide a quick recap before getting down to the recommendation.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, just at a quick summary level, building on the Finance Committee of October 14th, where we brought the revised standard cost of a teacher, funding allocation to school, and expected funding from the ministry all increased by about 4.5%. We've since sent budget books out to the schools using the 1701 student counts. They've returned a balanced budget, and the result of that is an expected unallocated contingency of $710,069 going back 6 years. We're typically between 400 and 550, a little under 1% of a $55 million operating budget. This is about 1.3%, given the uncertainty of the current year, perhaps wise to be on the high side of that 1% where we've been coming in recently. Yeah. So it's looking pretty good, looking consistent with what we've done in prior years. And yeah, I think that's about it at the summary level.
Okay, any questions for Ralph on that summary? All right, did you want to make any separate remarks about the budget details, or is that just there for the board's information?
Totally there for the board's information.
Okay, thank you. And I'll just open it up to, are there any questions about the budget detail document, Schedule B? Okay, seeing none, then we can move down to the recommended motion. Someone prepared to make that? If so, just start reading.
Sure. Where am I?
You're on, Ian.
That the Finance Committee recommend the Board of Education give first reading to School District 48, Sea to Sky, amended annual budget bylaw for fiscal year 2020-2021 on Schedule A as presented. Pursuant to Section 113 of the School Act, RSBC 1996 C4112 as amended from time to time, called the Act.
Thank you. And I'm looking for a seconder of that.
I can second that.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on that? Then all in favor? Well, 1, 2, 3, and
Yes.
any opposed? Hearing none, that's carried. And having completed the agenda of this meeting, I'm going to declare it adjourned. And we will be back at 1:15 for a committee of the whole. See you in about 25 or 30 minutes.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Now-